Shims are a useful method of extending the life of a rail joint and can be an effective way to manage the early stages of joint fatigue, like worn fishing surfaces and dip angles. They work by taking up the wear between the fishing surfaces of the rail and the fish plates, which helps prevent the rail ends from becoming crippled. Shims cannot be used on insulated rail joints and will not cure crippled or battered rail ends. In addition, they cannot be used to correct mismatched rail sections. Shims are available for flat-bottomed and bullhead rail and have their thickness marked on them. They're available in metric and imperial measurements, so it's important to note what set is being used. Flat-bottom shims have a wider slot at one end and come in two parts, one part for each side of the joint. They are left and right-handed. Bullhead shims are longer and have two slots to fit over two bolts. They may be cut in half because the rail ends may have different wear on the run-off and run-on ends. The scoping for rail joint shimming should be conducted during the lifting and packing scope. During the scope, the rail end must be inspected to determine whether shims are a suitable method to improve the joint or whether rail end straightening is more appropriate. Another consideration may be to use lift plates for uneven rail end wear, as shims cannot be used to equalize rail end wear. To measure what amount of shims are required, place the calibrated radius gauge over the joint, with the digital gauge positioned approximately 18 mm from one of the rail ends, and take the reading and note it on the scoping form. Move the gauge so that the other rail end can be measured and recorded. For both rail ends, the amount measured in millimeters by the gauge equals in millimeters what shims are required. An alternative method for measuring the amount of shims required is using a 1 meter straight edge and a set of shim gauges. Shim gauges are available in metric and imperial measurements, so it's important to note what set is being used and what shims are going to be used. To use the shim gauges, place the 1 meter straight edge centrally on the rail head at the joint and measure the gap between the rail head and the underside of the straight edge with the shim gauges. The measurements must be taken 18 mm from the ends of the rails, with both rail ends measured. The total number of shims required should be recorded on the scoping form. It is important to note that no more than 2 shims per side should be used at any one time. If the amount of wear on the fishing surface is more than can be taken up by 2 of the biggest shims, then rail replacement must be planned. If the site has been scoped by someone else, ensure you understand their instructions and are confident in completing the work. Do not attempt to start work if the rail temperature is likely to exceed 38 degrees C or drop below -7 degrees C. Confirm that the correct shims are available. Lubricate the exposed fish bolt threads and slacken the fish bolts enough to allow the shim to be fitted in through the top of the fish plate and the underside of the rail head. Clean and wire brush the fishing surfaces. Fit the required shims to both sides of the rail on both rail ends, ensuring they're positioned correctly on top of the bolts. Lubricate the fish plates and tighten the bolts to the correct torque. Lift and pack the joint. Then clear away any scrap and tools and leave the site tidy and restore the correct ballast profile. When any work takes place, like fish plate oiling or fish plate changing that may displace any of the shims, it is important to make sure all of the shims are replaced in their correct positions.